Hello there, it is Jo from Minerva, and today we're going to take a look at putting on an all-in-one facing. Facings are a piece of fabric that goes inside a neckline or a sleeve line. It's on woven fabrics so that you get a clean finish around all of the edges. I'm making my all-in-one facing today in a different colour so that you can see the components of the top, but you would be making them out of the same colour. The fabric that I'm using today is new. It is from our new base cloth range, which is a linen mix. The fabric is fantastic. It's really light. It's got that viscose element so it doesn't crease so much, and it's got quite an open weave so you can make sure that you ease your fabric in around curves. The pattern that I'm using is New Look 6483, which is a complete keeper of a pattern. I've used it for so many different tops. It makes a shell top with a little slit at the back so that it goes over your head, and you can have it with short sleeves, different neckline finishes, or different widths on your shoulder. I'm going to be making view D, which has a square neck. So there's a flat piece at the bottom and then quite a sharp curve on each side of the neckline. This pattern features an all-in-one facing in the instructions because you have quite a narrow place here on your shoulder, so you don't really want to have separate armhole facings and a separate neck facing because you'd get lots of bulk here. Today in the video I'm going to show you how to cut one out, how to finish the edge, how to apply it to your top, turn it through and finish off the back opening. I'm also just going to have a quick look to see if I can draft my own facings, which is really useful if you have a sleeved top and you want to turn it into a sleeveless garment and you've made a few alterations around the sleeve head, and then you need to cut some facings so that you get completely enclosed seams. First of all, let's cut out our facings. I'm using a chambray on the inside, so you would normally be using your own fabric, but if you're using a viscose, it's sometimes a good idea to interface a whole piece of fabric so that you can cut out your facing piece in one, because with a slippy fabric it's really difficult to cut out your facing piece in fabric, then cut it out in interfacing and try and iron them together without getting any twisting or moving. So when you embark on an all-in-one facing, you will only have two pieces. So you'll have the front piece, so this will be cut on the fold, so make sure you cut that on the fold. It always takes up a little bit more fabric than you'd like it to, but it really does finish off the front edge of your garment. And a back piece which isn't cut on the fold, but you need to observe the grain line. On this piece you need to put the notches on because it's quite an unusual piece when you take the pins out, so you don't want to get it in the wrong way around. It's going to go like this. So this will be the armhole, this will be the shoulder, and this will be under your clothes, around your shoulders and your bust. Most patterns call for you to add interfacing to the back of your facing pieces, and that's where some people add an interfacing that is too strong. So you only need to add something that's lighter or the same weight as your actual fabric. So you don't want to be stiffening this, or you'll get really it will be too crisp and your front will not be soft and lie in a crisp fashion. It'll sort of maybe poke forwards or stick out at your shoulders. You don't want to over stiffen it, so you need a lightweight interfacing on this chambray. So when they're cut out, they're then ready to match up and fuse together. Gluey side down. Might need to use a press cloth. Just make sure you don't melt the interfacing. You need to join your shoulder seams with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. That's the same as your top. And you need to be quite accurate with that so that your armhole fits into the armhole space and the neck fits into the neck space, because you want to make sure that that very sharp curve on this view lands in the right place. If we change this seam allowance, then our curve might go up a bit onto that straighter bit. If our seam allowance is a bit small, then our curve will drop down where we want that nice flush flat front line. Trim your threads and press your seams open. I've also finished the lower edges of my facing I've overlocked them because it's quick. Zigzagging them is quick. Using the overcast foot on your machine is also fast. You can do more couture things if this is for a unlined dress, so you can trim that with a ribbon edge. Just be careful if you do anything to that edge that might add a little bit of bulk, then you will see it on the front edge of your garment. This is the facing unit complete. So you've got your armhole and your neck hole facing all together there in one piece, so you don't have an armhole facing overlapping a shoulder facing. So it's time to put this into the top, and there's a special way to do it so that you can turn it out and have a clean armhole and a clean neck hole at the same time. You may have been asked to stay stitch your neckline just to make sure that that doesn't stretch out, which is one row of stitching. So next thing you're going to do is to match up all of the notches around the neckline and all around the armholes, and we're going to pin around this neckline, and we're going to pin all along this arm edge. And when you've sewn all the way around, you've got a little bit of fabric handling to do. So because you've got a lot of curves here, you're going to need to clip out your curves. So you clip the allowance, not the actual seam. When it gets to the shoulders, you can clip off the corners. And this will reduce bulk. In the sharper corner here, you can take out some little triangles. That will mean that that sharp concave curve won't have lots of fabric all bunched up behind it. And keep preparing the seam. You can continue to make the top. The side seams are the only other little place of note. So you join up the hem, match up the side notches, match up the underarm seam, and then take a stitch line through the facing, through the underarm seam, making sure it's matched up, through the dart, down the side and to the hem. And then this will roll over and you will have a complete arm facing. Once you've pressed the seam open, you can either hand stitch at the bottom of the facing to hold it to the seam allowance, or from the right side you can stitch in the ditch, which is taking just a little row of machine stitches through the ditch of the facing join. You mostly do it from the right side so that you follow the side seam ditch, and then it doesn't matter if it doesn't quite match up with the one on the facing because that'll be on the inside, but make sure it's neat on the outside. So that will stop your facings from moving out. When it's complete, you'll have your really smooth armhole seams, and across the back you can fold under the end and sew it so that it's folded behind the slit on the back, and from the right side your top fabric is rolling to the front and your facing is rolling to the back. And that's how you apply an all-in-one facing. To make your own, you're going to trace off the neckline and the sleeve line. I've just got some white paper to show you because it's easier for you to see the pattern piece. So you trace around the neckline and add all of the notches, because you will need the notches to match up your facing when you attach it. Be as accurate as you can, because if these curves don't fit, then you'll end up with bubbling on your shoulder. So this is the shape that we want, but we don't want all of this as one thick piece. So you can just cut some of that out, curves it out. Make sure you know that you've got a fold. So that's your front facing, and then you make your back facing in the same way. And remember, this armhole has to fit the other underarm hole. So this is 6 centimeters. And you can also scoop this out depending on your back opening. So this is the neck. And then you can cut these out, and that's your back facing and your front facing. Out of interest, let's see how close they are to the actual pattern pieces. So this is on the centre fold and the back opening. So we've got the neckline the same, the shoulder the same, and the arm side the same. I have scooped out more from the under edge of the facing, but that doesn't matter because that's on the inside. And on this one, I have the neckline the same, the shoulder the same. I am scooping out a little bit more there. That's because I haven't taken account of the dart on the front. So once the dart's closed up, I may get a slightly different angle there. But I've got too much, so that's what I want. I don't want too little. So that's how you make your own facings if you're changing a pattern from a sleeved top to a sleeveless top. I hope that's shown you how to make an all-in-one facing. The instructions are normally pretty clear, but sometimes you think, well, how can I sew the neck and the sleeve together and turn it inside out? But the key is not to sew up the back centre seam. Obviously, if you don't have a back centre seam and you're going to be manipulating a pattern, you can't cut the front and the back on the fold and then sew those two things, because you would just completely enclose everything. So you would need to make a centre back seam so that you get a split at the top, and that way you will be able to sew the arms and the neck and then pull the two pieces through the shoulders. So here is the facing around the arms. You can see none of it is peeking out. Got a really smooth neckline and nothing too bulky at the shoulders. But because it's well pressed, you can't see any of the facing. So it's a really good way of using a small piece of fabric, because you can always cut your facings out of a different fabric. As long as it's a similar fabric and it behaves in a similar way, you can use a different colour. So I used that piece of blue chambray on the inside. All the products that I've used are listed below, so if you fancy making New Look 6483, it really is a keeper of a pattern. It says a 1 hour top, but I would say if you want to make a really good job of those facings and take some time to press them all down, it just takes a little bit longer. If you head over to Minerva, you can make an account for yourself, share your makes, take a look at what other inspirational makers have been making. We would like to see what you've made, so do upload your photographs and any descriptions of garments or crafting projects that you have been making. You can also find our tutorials for other things, so there are sew-alongs, fabric pairings with patterns, quite a few educational ones from me, or learn to sew tips, which are all over on Minerva. Thank you very much for watching. Do call again soon.